I'm going to say this really boldly, we would never release a game that did not have a strong story or strong character narrative.
Welcome to Interior Night. Come through. You can see our photos. These are like highlights of team events. The Walker family is so cute to see them all together and not in character, which is amazing. Our awards. Doing this one. Don't know if you've ever picked this up, but it's like super heavy. Oh my god, I'm gonna break it. I'm gonna put that down before anything happens. MCV awards, accessibility and narrative. Oh, do you see this? We were nominated for best debut game. You get one shot at this as a studio, so I'm really, really proud of that one.
The role of narrative is crucial. It's like we do narrative games. It's story driven. So this is the core of what we're doing, which I believe is it's also what makes, I think, Interior Night standing out.
A super strong narrative and really complex characters. I think that is pretty much like the backbone of our company. Like the whole point of us is we want to tell really complex stories.
We make games that are like, first of all, they are like narrative experience, and the main thing is that, like, if you think about Vince, one of the main characters of As Dusk Falls, Vince is not a superhero. It's not even a hero, to be honest. I think that this is what it is. It's basically the narrative of having incredible situation with ordinary people, so that you can really relate that.
We start with the script. We also have a game design Bible, but most of the design is also rolled into the script. So I think we tend to say, like, people don't like to read, at work nobody reads documents, but this one everybody actually does read it and come back to it as a reference for the intentions of what we're doing, for the characters, etc. So it's great. I love it. We do table reads, even the programmers know the script so well. So I think that might be one thing that's peculiar with Interior Night.
We lack a lot of kind of classic gameplay elements, so it is fundamentally a narrative game, and without that, without the story, then there is no game. Effectively, we could, from a technical point of view, we could implement like the whole thing perfectly in all systems and all tools perfectly, but if the story's not good, then the game's not good, and that's just how it is. So, it is just essential to get that good team of writers and like artists together in order to actually make the content.
The focus on the story, the focus on characters. I think a lot of games can say that, but I think you can see the complexities of the characters that we have, that we really do care about them above anything else, above gameplay, above the look. It's the characters. Like, what is it about them? Can we empathize with them? Can we play as if they were real characters? The amount of work we put into that, into not judging our characters, not stereotyping them, not making them gimmicky characters, but really believing in them and in their stories.
Doesn't matter. We need to hurry. It has to be in here.
We craft multiple endpoints for each characters and the plot as well. So all that is done at the very high level with a writer's room, like in a TV show, except all we talk about at the beginning is the narrative structure, who the characters are, and where we want the big inflection points, the big story branches to stem from.
You can say, in a way, in film, there's always like one perfect plot for a character, and when you do branching, you kind of explore the plots that aren't perfect, but then there's fun in that, because you realize, again, there are more aspects to the character. You can play around with that.
So in between those tentpole choices, there are, of course, a lot of smaller choices, or sometimes quite big choices, that influence the relationships between the characters, or also help build up towards the big decision points that create massive branches. And usually, like with As Dusk Falls, for example, we had at least per chapter between 3 and 5 tentpole choices, everything built up to. So that these are the ones that we hope like players will remember after they finish playing. but also sometimes we saw that, even the smaller things, do you cheat while playing with your daughter or not? That players will remember the smaller ones as well.
We want to make sure, from the writer point of view, they more like focus on the character and the story. From the design point of view, we focus on how the player reacts, how the player experience. So from that, we merge together, and then hopefully we provide a nice experience that player will feel that the choice is impactful, the choice is actually have a say on the story and the character.
We need to get out of here. Give me your wrist. Almost. I think I got it.
One of the best things about an interior night game is that it's so distinctive to other games. For example, the art style. You look at As Dusk Falls and you immediately know it's As Dusk Falls. You know it's interior night. It's not another game studio or another game. So every frame is beautiful in itself. But the way we created that was very distinctive. We came up with a whole new way of filming. We had to train the actors in actually how to act to that script. The way that we placed the 2D images of characters in a 3D scene was very novel. And then the animation style applies to that again, and the way we manipulated cameras, it was very bespoke.
So it's like just going backwards through that very first time when the walkers arrive at the Desert Dream Motel. So you can see like each individual sort of shot frame here and how they're related. Easy. So this is actually what it kind of looks like. And see from the back. See from the blue, see the blue, then it means you're from the back of the shot frame, which is bad. But obviously that doesn't actually happen in game. This one actually a fairly typical shot. Some of them we do kind of cheated a bit in terms of how they're cut apart so that they look correct in scene. It's like it's always a case where like the final result is always the most important part, and to achieve that, rather than necessarily how it kind of looks, and you kind of see it out of context.
Everything from the art side, gameplay side, is about reinforcing that narrative and that narrative experience for the player. Everything from hitting the right tone or pitch narratively, visually, and so on is reinforced by the visuals of the game and the gameplay. So it's intrinsically linked to the DNA of what Interior Night created.
In the end, you need to create this illusion. Of course, it needs to be believable, but it also needs to be looking good in camera, and it needs to be look good for life. It needs to serve the purpose of the story. This is probably the version like 257, because it's also that sort of situation where you have an idea, the art director has an idea in their mind, but it's only when you start to put it on paper and you start to see it, and maybe you realize some stuff doesn't work, so you need to keep working up until it's done. So yeah, after, when this is in the end, when this is done, we of course like to send it like to the 3D department and to the cinematic, so that they can build it the way we imagined it.
Now we go into like the full-on like grey box environment and T-posing, but you can still see the bones of the scene that kind of made it into the final game. Yeah, like it is interesting to kind of compare with the final thing of just obviously how basic it is. I mean, this was the very first milestone that we had in kind of like timelines in it, so it was a case of showing we could do something where it's like, okay, it's an environment, there are things moving in different scenes that you move between, and it is, with enough imagination, you could imagine it was a game.
I mean, there were quite a few challenges combining like 2D elements with 3D elements from a cinematic point of view. One of them was definitely like camera animation. So as a cinematic artist, you kind of want to go quite crazy with the cameras. You really, especially in action sequences, you want to put in as much like elaborate movement as possible. But when you have a 2D character in your 3D world, you can't do that. You have to be so careful, because if you move further enough like round the model, you can reveal to the audience that actually, this is 2D, it's not a living, breathing world at all. So you have to be so careful. So you have to, it's kind of like problem solving. You have to kind of work out, okay, how can I make this dynamic? How can I make this really interesting to whoever's playing, but still keep the movement of the camera fairly subdued, so that we don't reveal that it is actually just a 2D plane.
And it is one of the tricky things about this kind of game as well, in that how much the game works is very much a function of how much of the content is done. Like, even, 75% of the way through, it probably wouldn't hit as a good game because you didn't have all the things coming together, like the cinematics and the art and the music and the VO and that kind of thing. The first version of this has placeholder VO, which we used a lot, where it's like members of the studio recording, which is always good fun. It's nice to have a change from your standard day of coding to do some ridiculous VO. Okay, fun fact is you remember Mima? I was a placeholder VO for Mima. There we go. I'm not sure why they chose me to play like a very elderly American lady, but so that was fun to do.
What started off maybe feeling like a constraint, especially when you're first starting the project and you're like, oh, this is just not how I usually work, I can't get it to look good, I want to add this. It kind of really helped develop our art style, actually. And then you started to really enjoy the process, and especially the more familiar you became with setting up these scenes, you're like, okay, so it's like this type of scene, right, okay, I'm gonna have to do something like this, or maybe I can even push it a bit more like this. So something that started off a constraint actually became quite liberating as we started to develop the art style.
I think people would find surprising how many hours I spend staring at one specific expression of a face, because we worked with frames rather than full images. We used to just look at a photo and just discuss the expression, what would it say, and for months and months and months you're doing this with hours of performances, and you realize that then you pick things about someone's expression that no one else cares about, and you start looking at people in the streets like that. It's like every move they do, you go, oh, that would be perfect to express your moment of anxiety towards this object, but it's all really crazy minimal stuff. One thing we looked for was clarity from a kind of comic book point of view, where the body language had to express something that sometimes the facial expression on its own wouldn't express. So we always look for big gestures in terms of where the hands are, or the body position had to be over-expressive because you don't get all the frames in between. But with specifically just the facial expression, it was a bit more of a vibe. It was a bit more it is kind of, as a director, what do you want to say with this? Because some of us wanted a very subtle performance, some of us were super clear, and then we had to kind of find a way to make sense of it all. But yeah, it was a mix of those two.
I think what makes an interior night game is hopefully a prestige story, really good quality of story, interesting characters that work hand in hand with super approachable gameplay, and we're very passionate about multiplayer. We want players to enjoy great stories, which everybody enjoys really, but to be able to enjoy those great stories with people they love, who might be gamers or might not be gamers, or might not know they are gamers yet.
So the challenge would be we want it to be level playing field, because we don't want to make the player that who normally play game feel like they are less good. So that's why we have the conscious decision to make the game really simple. So you just need to use one finger. If you're using the phone to control the cursor, then you just need to one tap to select, or doing really simple QTE. So in order to do that, you'll be able to involve more people. And then the other thing is about the controller. As you know, we have the normal PlayStation controller or Xbox controller. Sometimes it's a bit of difficult for non-gamer to able to hold the controller and know what to do. So that's why we design the companion app on the phone. So you'll be able to, because everyone have a phone, everyone able to play game or control it. So we want it to be even you don't use the controller, you can use the companion app.
So when we start a project and when we design it, what we're about is really offering mature storytelling that you can usually see on TV, bring those into games with intense pacing, adult themes, complex characters, and bring all that and make it available for anyone to be able to play with. I played with my mom not long ago. I played As Dusk Falls with my mom. It was her first game, and it was a no-brainer. She managed to interact on a level playing field with everybody else, but she was as savvy as everybody else because she understands stories and people. That was a really nice experience, and that's really what we're after, you know, because when you play with other people, suddenly people you love and that you see every day, and maybe you talk about the groceries, but this time you do something interesting and you rediscover your loved ones, and you're like, oh, you're actually really nice, this is why I love you, or why I don't love that so much about you, you have to work on it.
So I think one of the best things about Interior Night is the team itself. And we've really taken veterans from the game studio, you know, from games like Caroline and myself, been making games for over 20 years. And then we've added inspirational people from across the entertainment industries. And we really wanted to get those alternative perspectives on the scripts and how you interpret a character.
It was important for us to hire storytellers. And storytellers come across like different industries. And, you know, because we've got a very unique style as well that involves filming live actors, and of course our games are very cinematic. We needed that eye, and people were able to understand, like, you know, and provide a great cinematic style and a deep understanding of character and stories. And in the years to come, super excited to challenge ourselves with innovative multiplayer stories.
We're going to be telling more stories, and they're going to be really exciting and original and new and intense.
What we're creating here at Interior Night can't be pigeonholed.
We're always going to be really ambitious. We're always going to punch above our weight.
We're kind of looking forward to bringing kind of more nail-biting stories to share with your friends.
We'll be working on more innovative narrative experiences for people to play with others, like that people they love, hopefully, and keep challenging ourselves. Like, I'm very excited in like pushing the boundaries of what games are supposed to be and who they're supposed to be talking to.
It's no longer just a gamer's game or a definition of a game. It's that mixed media element where, you know, it's a playable TV show or a playable way of getting across a story.
The narrative space is blossoming between film, TV and games. There's loads of synergy happenings and transmedia initiatives. So I'm very excited about that as well.